Hi, this is Catherine. This is Taking Tea with Catherine. And as I'm doing a tag about traveling, I thought I'd travel to another room to make this video, but actually I'm doing it because there's a bit of noise interference in the other room. And since I don't have a cup of tea to show you guys today, I'm just showing the tea that I got on vacation whilst traveling. This is an Alice in Wonderland tea from New English Teas. My sister got it for me in Chicago. So yes, out of town. Um, and so, yes, I'm doing this tag called Traveling with Books tag. That was an original tag by Gina Stanier Books, and she subsequently later on followed. Um, how many things am I going to say? Followed up later on, subsequently. She tagged me later on, and I was happy about that because I think I was going to do the tag anyway, but I watched this video that she did when I was out of town, when I was with my sister, when we had been very much talking about traveling with books. So I thought incredibly apt at the time. So I am glad to do it now. And so we'll get started with the questions. Some of them, the answers might overlap into other things because that's what I do. But number one is, do you read when you travel? And indeed I do. I don't read as much because I am on the go. I always say I'm going to read while I'm on an airplane. Not so much when I'm doing like a red eye, uh, but um, but even though I don't read as much when I'm on red eyes, on other flights I always say, because I don't really like to sleep on planes when I don't have to. I always say, oh, I'm going to read. I'm going to read. And this last flight I took going out, I had heard that it's a short flight, so I probably wouldn't have in-flight entertainment. But guess what? We did. So I ended up watching a bit of television. They had a Gilmore Girls on, and it's autumn, so I am being that person who watches Gilmore Girls in the autumn. Actually, it's not autumn yet, but it's September. Let's face it. I got the AC on, but in my heart, it is autumnal. So, but nevertheless, I did still read when I could, and my sister and we spent a lot of great time together. Not just talking about books, but we talked about a lot of things. But books was always a subject. And we ended up reading together sometimes, just having quiet reading times. For instance, she took me down to Lake Michigan, my first Great Lake, and it looked lovely. And so with that beautiful view, we both are reading currently by Anthony Trollope, Three Clerks, or Three Clarks, depending on where you're from. And yeah, it was fantastic to be not only reading the same book as her, so that we could sort of converse about it a little bit, not too much because she was reading ahead of me a little bit, but just to have that quiet time to read. So, and there were always few stolen moments. When I've traveled by myself, now it's a long time ago, this is my first trip in years because of COVID and everything. But when I traveled on my own, I definitely readed. Wow. I definitely read more because I would bring books with me to like restaurants and stuff if I was dining alone, obviously, and I didn't have a problem with that, and just little intervals of time wherein I just wanted to get my mind off of things, I would read, and that is always a good thing to me. So yes, indeed I do read when I travel. Number two, do you travel with paper books? Yes. I always say it doesn't hurt to have something to fall back on. Sometimes I overdo it, and I'll talk about that soon, but yes, I definitely do. Number three, do you travel with an e-reader? And yes, I do that too. I have had, usually, not every trip actually, but many trips I've had some form of a tablet with an e-reader app or two on it. And currently I have a tablet that has, I think, 3 reading apps. A Kindle app, a Nook app, and a Libby, which is my library. So one of my public library apps. And so I'm not a big fan of e-reading, but I do bring it with me, and I always like to know that I have that backup as well. It just never hurts for me to have stuff to read because I've talked about this on videos before, but it was like a minor version of trauma that I had a a time where I was on a long flight with no entertainment, and I had finished my book, and ever since then I do not want to be in that position ever again. So yes, never, never. So you know what happens? It happens, and I don't like to be caught out. I travel commute wise. I travel with with at least paper books, but probably e-reading capacities. So yes, always be prepared. Number 4, how many books do you pack when you travel? Now, I thought about, like I said, because this last trip that I took to Chicago was the first time in ages, I was like, this is probably not my average situation. But, now my cat's looking at me. What do you want, Freddie? I know you can't see him on the camera, but he is a little camera shy. Why are you so camera shy, Freddie? I feel like I'm talking to my imaginary friend. Freddie, you like to stare at me in the middle? Yep. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Where was I? Let's go back to, what was the question? How many books do I pack when I travel? I did think back to the past, I don't know, 5, 6 trips, and on the average, I pack 2 books. Usually, just in case. Like, usually, if I can, I will pick a fiction and a nonfiction, like a mystery novel and a memoir or something like that, because it suits the moods. But I overloaded this past trip, and I shouldn't have, because I knew I wouldn't need those many books. But I think I brought, I can't remember now, either 4 or 5 books with me, and that is silly, and yeah, not balanced. But I only regret, well, maybe 2 of those books, because one of them, it was a book I ended up DNFing, and the other one I just didn't even read at all from the whole trip. So that was silly of me. So that's not my normal. 2 books is my normal. Number 5, does where you go or how long you are traveling impact the amount or type of books you take? Yes, indeed. I have also had that kind of planning of imaginary situations. Like if I were somehow to ever take a cruise, which I don't see myself doing because of my issue with motion sickness, and I know there are ways to get around that, people say. But then they also say, yeah, there are ways to get around it. But of course, there was one day where we were having a little bit of a rough time, and I only threw up once. And I said, I'm sorry, but if you wanted to sell me on traveling via cruise ship, you have not done so. But I tend to try to think about how much free time I'm going to have and how much access I'm going to have to books. Like if I were visiting someone who had a massive library that I could borrow from, I might think about bringing fewer books, especially if I knew that they were cool with me borrowing them. But even then, I'd probably bring at least 1 or 2 of my own books. If I were going to go somewhere like a resort, which I haven't done in a while, but if I was going to, and I knew there was very little access, I'd probably bring more books, even with e-reading capabilities, because yeah, if I knew I was going to travel on my own, I would make sure to have enough reading. Right, Freddie? My imaginary friend is really distracting me today. So yes, it really does depend. It depends just, who I'm traveling with, where I'm going, what kind of packing I need to do, because I would say if I were, I don't know, I can't really read in cars either, but if I were to take like a long road trip and we could bring a lot of stuff with us, I'd probably bring a good chunk of books. But when you're going on an airplane, there are weight issues, you know what I mean? Number 6, do you buy books when traveling or visit bookshops/libraries? Yes, big time, if I can. And just the last part, but about visiting libraries, one would say, well, why visit a library when you can't check anything out? Because they're beautiful. If I did visit the British Library when I went to London last time, and it was fascinating. There are a lot of places that you can go that have wonderful collections, and libraries could be like museums anyway. It's not just book collections. If, like, visiting my sister, for instance, she is a big patron of the public libraries near her, and she always has to either return or check out a book, so I'm probably going to go with her anyway, and I do not complain about that. Bonnie did a really good job of planning out different bookshops and where they were going to be, and how we were going to end up visiting them. So, okay, I got a little distracted again by my cat. Oh yeah, so we were talking about my sister. Yes, she did a really amazing job of saying, okay, these are the bookshops that I've checked out and I want to bring you to because they were really good, Catherine. And these are also the bookshops that you suggested from looking at different things. And these are the places that, you know, that I've heard of and haven't gone to. So she mapped everything out very well. And as well, we also hit all these little free libraries because her neighborhood and the areas around it have some really good ones. So that you'll see in my upcoming Chicago book haul. But it was wonderful, and of course, going to a place like that does afford a lot of book shopping. And I try not to just book shop when I go away, but I'm a book lover. I love books. I love buying books. What can I say? The same thing goes for when I've gone to London. My friend in Florida, when I visited her, used to take me to Barnes & Noble when possible. And probably would if I visited again. My friend in California, when I visited her, she took me to a bunch of bookshops. It is just what I do. It is just what I like, not just as a book lover, but a physical book lover. The only exception I would say is going to places that don't have English language bookshops. Doesn't mean I won't go, especially if like the architecture is pretty amazing or it's got this amazing collection that everybody talks about or something. So it's a must see in general just for book lovers, but it isn't as appealing when I can't read the books. So, for instance, when I went to Montreal many years ago, we went to a place called Chapters, which I think is now like Indigo Chapters or something like that. But at the time it was Chapters, and we went to a pretty decent sized bookshop, but most of it in this particular location had French books. Now that's wonderful, but I don't really speak French. So, and I read very little French as well. So it felt like, okay, this is nice. Look at the books. But, however, of course, if I went to Paris, I would go to Shakespeare and Company, an English language bookshop, of course. But yeah, I'd still, if I knew of a famous place in a land that didn't have really much English language bookshops, I'd still probably look at it because I'm just that kind of book nerd. But yeah, there are no ends to that. And of course, let's not forget, even though I try not to overdo it in these places, most airports have bookshops or some kind of newsstand / bookshop that one could enjoy. And if I can, I will visit them. Even if I don't buy anything, it's just so fun to see what books are featured there. And sometimes you see new books that, you kind of want, but then you're like, do I really need to get this now? Am I really going to read this? I have books, but I will visit it. So yes, thank you for making this tag, Gina, and thank you for tagging me subsequently. And I was going to tag people, but I think a lot of the people have already been tagged, but there are a couple people I know that might like to do this one, and particularly if you are thinking about travel right now. If you're planning a trip, or if you just come back from a trip, or you're currently on one, it's probably on your mind. So yeah, definitely think about it. And if you like talking not just about travel, but books, any kind of book-related subjects, please feel free to subscribe. If you like to talk about tea, please subscribe. If you like to talk about people talking to invisible cats, please subscribe. So this has been Catherine at Taking Tea with Catherine. Have a lovely tea and book-filled day. Bye.